everybody. My name is Jared Tate, and I am the founder of the DigiByte blockchain. And welcome to part one of my three-part video series on DigiByte version 8.22, which is going to be the next version of DigiByte. First of all, thank you all for tuning in. And for those of you who may be new, I'm just going to do a quick intro to what DigiByte is. DigiByte is a 9-year-old, truly decentralized, open source blockchain. In fact, we just celebrated our 9th birthday on January 10th. That was our Genesis Day. And in those 9 years, DigiByte has made numerous improvements and a lot of firsts. We've had 100% uptime, and currently DigiByte is the longest UTXO in the world, which that's a type of blockchain like Bitcoin, Litecoin. And currently we have about 16.5 million blocks in our blockchain. So 100% uptime, 16.5 million blocks, a lot of firsts, a lot of innovations, and not to mention from day one, there's never been a company, there's never been any sort of centralized entity, there's no centralized pre-mine funds. I could tell you myself as the founder, I have less than a fraction of 1% of 1%. So I in every DigiByte I have ever had, I either mined or I purchased myself. So DigiByte really is decentralized, and it's a blockchain of the people, for the people, and by the people. We have an amazing community, and we would like to warmly welcome you and invite you into our community. So with that being said, as I said before, this is part one of a three-part video series that I'm going to do regarding version 8.22, which will be our next version of the DigiByte blockchain. I'm doing this because to get everything in and to cover all the topics that I need to, I really need to split it up. So part two will be current DigiByte version 8.22 progress, as well as the bugs we're currently encountering in a wallet demo. And then part three will be a more in-depth discussion regarding any future potential hard forks for DigiByte, algo swaps, and some other insights. So with that being said, let's get started. I am going to go over here and I am going to, let's start over here. I need to readjust this window here. Give me just a second. Alrighty. So DGB versioning. So as you know, we're working on version 8.22. So what does that mean? That basically means this will be the 8th major version of DigiByte, over in the last 9 years. Now, what does the version 2.2 mean? That means that we're basically on par with that version of Bitcoin Core. So as you can see here, Bitcoin Core is currently on version 2.22. Now that was actually released almost a year and a half ago, which is when we started work on version 8.22. This is definitely taken us a while, and yes, we are a year and a half into this, but this is the largest DigiByte upgrade we've ever done. And it's probably the best process we've ever used because we've implemented a completely new development process into how we handle updates. So it's not just reliant on any one person, and it takes multiple people to make changes. So with that being said, as you can see, version 8.22 will be the 8th version of DigiByte, and it will be on par and have a lot of the features and changes that are in Bitcoin version 2.2. Now, our previous version, 7.17.2 and 7.17.3, is on par with Bitcoin version 0.17, which was released roughly at the beginning of 2019. So as you can see, it's basically been 4 years, and there's been a tremendous amount of changes. I would say there's been more changes that have been made in Bitcoin Core in the last 4 years than the previous, 10 years since its inception before that. So there's a lot of that we can benefit from, and we're going to talk about some of that. So yeah, and keep in mind, Bitcoin version 2.2 is still the recommended stable version. If you go to download, that is what Bitcoin Core recommends for you. As you can see here, Bitcoin Core version 2.22. So before version 2.2, there was a 0 dot in front of it. I never thought that made sense. So the last version was called Bitcoin Core 0.21. and they decided to change it, and now they moved the decimal, which I think makes more sense to people. So here we go. So if we go to the DigiByte core GitHub, which is the organization where we have several developers that are admins, and you go to the DigiByte repository. If you come over here to the branches and you go to feature point 8.22, as you can see, there's a lot of work that's been done in various branches. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but our main work is being done in this feature point 8.22 branch. Now, what's amazing about this, if we go to pull request, which here's our current working pull request, and we go to feature point 8.22, so this is the main one we're working out of. As you can see over here, there are 283,658 lines of code that have been added, and there's 94,424 lines of code that have been removed. Now, DigiByte, like Bitcoin, is written in C++, which is a pretty very powerful, capable language that's been around for a long time. However, just 2 or 3 lines of C++ can be extremely complex, especially when you're dealing with cryptography in a blockchain. So it's truly remarkable that we have that many lines of code that have been changed. Now, to date, this is the biggest update we've ever done, and I would argue it's the toughest for numerous reasons, but we can get into some of that later. But we're getting through it and we're making progress. And a lot of that is thanks to the new development progress, where basically multiple devs have to agree on any changes that are made. So no one single person can control development or basically dictate how it goes. So it's slowed the process down, because when you have to wait for peer review, everybody has jobs. Nobody's getting paid currently to work on the DigiByte core protocol. We're all volunteers, so all of us have other day gigs, jobs, and stuff like that. So, and we're also all over the world in various time zones. So when you collaborate in that process, it does slow it down, but that helps to make the code review more thorough, help prevent more mistakes, and help unintentional bugs get introduced into the code. So it's a little slower, but this is the nature of open source development, and it's a global, worldwide community effort, which is really awesome. So, all right, so what are some of the biggest changes that have happened in these lines of code? Well, from version 0.17, which was our current stable version of Bitcoin, to the latest version, there's been a tremendous amount of code refactoring that has changed. Now, what is refactoring? That's where basically you go through and you rewrite code to either simplify it, improve it, make it more secure, or to basically bring it up to date with the latest changes in a programming language. So just like you have multiple versions of Bitcoin and DigiByte, in the case of C++, you have what are known as programming language standards. So the majority of Bitcoin Core and DigiByte Core was written with the C++ 2011 or the C++ 11 standard. Well, over the last few years, the last 3 years basically, there's been a tremendous amount of open source effort to modernize the C++ code, because there's a lot of significant changes and helpful benefits to the C++ language itself. However, that required a lot of refactoring in Bitcoin Core and DigiByte Core. So that's actually the majority, I would say, of the changes that have occurred between Bitcoin version 0.17 and Bitcoin version 2.2, and the same between DigiByte version 7 and our upcoming version 8. So it's not very sexy. There's a lot of nuance. I'm not going to go into it because unless you're a C++ programmer, it's just, going to go straight over everybody's head. But just know that this refactoring to modernize the core code base is very important, because it allows us to bring in new features of the C++ language and moving forward stay compatible. Now there is a C++ 2020 version, but the thing with C++ language versions, it'll take another probably 4 or 5 years before you see that, but we'll have to go through this process again in the future. So just know that. So some more big changes. I would say, if I come down here to my wallet, if you look in the upper right hand corner, there's a drop down. It says wallet. Well, inside the wallet, you can actually select, I don't know why it's not showing it. on my broadcast system here. But anyway, you can select between multiple wallets. So it used to be before this version, you actually would have to close the wallet, change the wallet.dat file, and then reopen it. Well, now you can have as many wallet.dat files in the core wallet as you want, and it'll actually switch between them, and it'll load them all at once. Now, for servers or platforms, this is actually really helpful because it allows a lot of new architecture from a very basic level on top of the DigiByte protocol. So that's a very helpful feature. You know, I've been using this test wallet obviously for a year now. I find it very handy just to switch between wallets. And I know there's a lot of use cases and platforms that's going to help with. So let me see here. Some more changes, Cedar changes. So whenever you open up a DigiByte wallet, it goes out and it gets a list of main default peers to basically start your seeding process in order to contact other nodes on the network. We're going to update those. The other big thing is a testnet reboot. We're getting a lot of requests for testnet, so we're going to reboot that. It's something we've had in the past, but you know, it kind of goes in spurts, and when we need it, especially when we're developing a new version, it's helpful. Testnet is very helpful for those who want to build on top of DigiByte and get new, you know, build new applications. Let's see here. So the next biggest thing that is going to happen with the next version of DigiByte is what we call Taproot. Now, Taproot is something that was introduced in Bitcoin Core version 0.21. And the key thing with Taproot is it's a soft fork, first of all, so it's not going to require a hard fork. But basically, it allows payments to what we call Schnorr public keys or Schnorr signatures, right? So what's important about Schnorr signatures? Well, Schnorr signatures has been around since the 90s, but they allow for a much more small and compact and efficient digital signature, right? To replace, you know, instead of a Schnorr public key, right? So this allows for faster verification. So it allows for a speedier and more scalable implementation and upgrade to DigiByte. So there's a lot of benefits for. So Schnorr builds on top of segregated witness, which is something we were actually the first altcoin to add SegWit in 2017. And what segregated witness basically did is it moved all the scripts and signature data into a witness section, which allowed it to be basically compacted, use less data, verify more efficient. Well, the next evolution of this is adding Schnorr signatures. So this basically allows key and signature aggregation, which, like I said, reduces transaction size, allows us faster transaction verification, and it's a significant scalability milestone that's been in the works for about, I don't know, 6 years now, 7 years. People have been talking about it. It took the Bitcoin devs 5 years, I think, to actually fully implement it. Bitcoin has this. They successfully did it. Everything's working great. One estimate basically said that Schnorr signatures are about 11% smaller than the existing signature scheme. However, as you have a bigger multi-sig transaction with more stuff, you basically can simplify it even more. So very beneficial. It also introduces the TapScript, which is going to be the scripting language for Taproot. And most of these operations, it shares most operations with legacy and SegWit script, but has a few differences. And those are OP check multisig, OP check multisig verify are replaced by OP check, I don't even know how they're pronounced, check sick add. Sorry, a little dyslexic here. So anyway, if you want a really awesome article on that, there's this article on Medium on how will Schnorr signatures benefit Bitcoin. Well, the same benefits apply to DigiByte, so go check that out. This is a more thorough technical explanation for those that are interested, but let's just say I'm all for it. It's going to be of good benefit for DigiByte. Now, in order to do this, before we roll out the first release, we're going to have to decide on soft fork activation. So that means we're going to have to decide how far in the future we want this to happen, how much time we want to give ourselves before we activate it, and what are the required parameters. Do we want to do an upgrade percentage? You know, there's a few different ways we do it. I want to open that up to the community because that's something we're going to have to determine. With that, there are numerous RPC changes, literally probably hundreds. So I'm not going to list them all. So RPCs, the remote procedure call, or how a lot of services interact with the wallet, or you yourself can, you know, if you're building on top of it. One of the big ones is they added get balances, which is basically all your balances, mined, immature, and untrusted. Set wallet flag, which is, you know, something that's useful in the multi-wallet feature. There's also been numerous P2P changes. Once again, I'm not going to list them all. If you want to check it, check out the logs. And you can view these logs basically if you go to bitcoin.org. You can see the different release notes for all the various versions. Like I said, since we're bringing in Bitcoin Core and merging it with the additional DigiByte features, you can rely on the documentation for Bitcoin for the most part. Although there are some issues, especially when it comes to mining, dandelion, and a few other things. So one of the biggest P2P features that Bitcoin improved in version 2.2 was they added support for I2P, which if you've never heard of I2P, it stands for Invisible Internet Protocol. Think of it as like it has a DNS, so it's kind of like a VPN. It acts kind of like a Bitcoin or a DigiByte node, and the fact that it's P2P and bounces traffic. However, there's no crypto element or mining element. It's literally a networking layer that stands between your DigiByte or Bitcoin wallet and the internet itself. So it's a little faster, you know, than like Tor. However, it is peer-to-peer, so you are allowing other people, so you're basically contributing some of your bandwidth, so you could have some random jumbo traffic going through it. So the idea is privacy and security, so it's an additional layer that, you know, the more I look into it, it's actually pretty fascinating. So it's an additional tool that you can look into to help protect yourself when you're doing crypto transactions on your, you know, your own computer. Let's see. So one of the other changes, P2P changes, is misbehaving peers are now referred to as discouraged nodes. So it used to be it completely added them to a ban list. However, I think they, after some research was done, Bitcoin core devs kind of decided, hey, we should, you know, have like a middle level. So not a complete ban, not a whitelist, but somewhere in the middle. So there's a lot more changes, you know, in almost 300,000 lines of code. There's many nuanced changes. Like I said, refactoring changes to standardize with the latest version of C++. So, you know, if I went over all those details thoroughly, we literally would be here for a couple days, and I'm sure you would probably have tuned out long ago. So I'm trying to keep this video as short as I can. So what are the remaining issues that we're trying to overcome before we release 8.22? Well, we basically have four big areas. Number one, we've had a lot of issues with Dandelion. So if you're not familiar with Dandelion, Dandelion is a privacy feature that was added in DigiByte that is not in Bitcoin Core. And if you imagine a dandelion that has a long stem and then it blossoms, like if you've ever kicked a dandelion, well, that's what it does with the transaction. So Dandelion sends it from one node to a single node only in a random amount of hops, up to 99, before it blossoms to the network. And the reason for this is to keep people from tracking which IP address was the creation and origination of a transaction. So, however, because it was never in Bitcoin Core and because all this refactoring has happened, it's caused tons of issues, mempool bugs, transaction bugs, and effectively we've had to rewrite Dandelion from the ground up. And it's been a complete pain, and you know, but we're working on it. That's probably been the biggest holdup. The next thing we're working is the supply curve smoothing and improvements. So there's a lot of questions regarding the distribution curve of DigiByte. The idea is that all 21 billion will be mined by the year 2035. However, for various issues and some issues that were caused with previous versions of DigiByte, that curve is not exact, and there's some question on what's going to happen at the end of that. Well, we want to make sure we put all those questions to rest. There's only going to be 21 billion DigiByte mined, and the mining reward will drop to zero on basically January 10th, 2035. I don't know why I wrote a book, but anyway, by the way, that book's on Amazon, Blockchain 2035, the Digital DNA of Internet 3.0. So I'm going to plug myself there. The next one is a bug I actually just found a few weeks ago, which is replaced by fee. There's a feature in Bitcoin where if you submit a transaction, it doesn't get picked up to the by the network because the fee is too low. You could actually replace it in the mempool with a lower fee or a higher fee. We don't really need that with DigiByte because we have super fast transactions. With our speedy blocks, fees have never been an issue. So we decided to pull that out. However, we've had some issues with the GUI as well as how the transactions are formed. There's a couple bugs I've identified, which is a serious issue because you don't want people having any issues sending and receiving DigiByte. So it's kind of always been my thing before a new version of DigiByte. If there's any issue sending and receiving, it's just a no-go, even for a test version. And then finally, the algo swap discussion. There's been a lot of discussion in the community about should we upgrade a DigiByte mining algorithm or not. I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I'm the first one to say is I'm not opposed to it. If we can have a new algorithm that's well tested, it's been implemented, that's going to be great. It's going to help decentralize mining. I'm all for it. However, there's a lot of questions and issues regarding that. But I want to go into that in more in depth in part 3 of this video series. So currently, like I said, we have been working on it part-time as we can. I myself, this previous 6 months, it was just crazy. I had a lot happening. I really didn't get a lot of work done on DGB because I've had to pay the bills and other commitments. However, here in 2023, I've got a little bit more time, focus. And I want to help bring in new developers, so if you're out there and you're interested in working on DGB, come help us. Currently, like I said, none of us are getting paid. It would be great if we had funding, for specific issues, or, if I could work full time just coding on DigiByte, I would love it. However, realistically, I can't do that right now. But I'm looking for ways to help fund development, not only for myself, but others. So I'm not going to give any estimate on when these issues will be done. It seems like we're getting close, and I myself have made the mistake of saying, yeah, it's close. And then we discover another bug and something happens. So we want this thing to be secure, thoroughly tested, and ready and stable, so nobody has any issues. Because, as the DigiByte network grows and more nodes, and it's bigger now than it ever has been, there's more services, there's more platforms. Most of these other platforms are dealing with a lot of stuff, and if we, bug them about an upgrade, and then we have to make them upgrade a week later, and then upgrade again, they're going to be like, who are these guys? Who are these rookies? Who are these amateurs? So we don't want to do that. We just want a one-and-done approach where people don't have to worry. It's smooth, and, all the kinks are ironed out. So with that being said, I want to thank all the other developers, all the other members of the community that are helping, all the other people that are helping test. I am thinking about doing a video, basically the process I go through on how I compile the client, test the client, how you can do it. I think it'd be very insightful, although I think it would be a little bit more technically in depth, but it's something I've never done and I probably should have done. So anyway, stay tuned for part 2 of this video, and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be making more content. I'm starting a video blog series, and I will basically be much more engaged in, on the ball with content in 2023. So please subscribe. And with that, I hope you have a great day. Cheers.